In today's video, we will be looking at trade targets, but from a little different angle. Let's look at the most traded players recently and talk if they are a buy or sell. This is obviously going to depend on your league's market and other managers' tendencies. This video, we're going to look at the top 12 traded players, and we're going to go in order starting from the most traded player according to CBS Sports. And that person is Garrett Wilson. He has been traded the most. All the hype with Wilson, it depleted following Aaron Rodgers' injury. Entered Zack Wilson. I would like to say he is a sell. However, he's been a sell after that Rodgers injury. As we all know, he probably would not perform well. In 2022, Wilson and Wilson, that connection was only for 8.82 points per game. But now looking at right now, over these last 2 weeks, Garrett Wilson, he does have 17 targets, but he only has 7 receptions. And this is tacking on 11.3 points per game. However, an additional positive is he does have an 80% red zone target share. However, when we look at it, he has 4 out of the 5 red zone targets. Yes, that's only 5 total red zone targets for the New York Jets. A small sample size, but it still tells us that he is favored there when they get there. I could see him definitely being a buy or a sell. It just depends on your league's market, and those manager tendencies as noted. The Jets, they may look to sign or trade for a notable quarterback, especially if they are hoping Aaron Rodgers will return in the playoffs. This would likely boost Garrett Wilson, with a new quarterback. But again, they got to make it to the playoffs for Rodgers to come back. If you are enjoying the video, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. The second most traded player is Raheem Mostert. It's definitely hard to recommend to sell a player who just put up 41 points. Coming off this week 3 victory, he had a total of 4 touchdowns and also had 142 yards. Miami offense, it's explosive. When we look at the top 6 fastest ball carriers, receptions, carries, it's all Miami players. This explosive offense, and now enters Devon Achane. He's definitely in the mix now. So Mostert, I am going to say he is a sell. Also this Jeff Wilson, he's going to return soon. Mostert, he has this injury history where he has only played over 12 games in only 2 out of his 8 seasons in his career. Week 3, it was the boom of all boom games. And obviously, this is not going to sustain moving forward. The entire backfield was involved. And even undrafted rookie Chris Brooks, he had 9 carries for 66 yards. Obviously, this huge blowout happened, so he was able to see some work. But when we look at Mostert, I'm going to sell high on Mostert. I'm going to acquire an equal high-scoring asset, but a stable one. Moving on to the third most traded player, and that is Jerome Ford. Another running back who comes off a multi-touchdown performance. But I am going to try and buy here. We had a tough Tennessee defense in week 3. Ford, he only put up 1.8 yards per carry. And coming at the third most traded player, we are looking at Jerome Ford. Now, another running back, he comes off a multi-touchdown performance, just like Mostert. He only had 2. But I am going to try and buy here. Coming off a tough Tennessee run defense, Ford, he only put up 1.8 yards per carry. He did have that rushing touchdown. He also had a receiving touchdown to help salvage that fantasy day. It should be noted, Kareem Hunt recently signed. He had 8 opportunities, and Pierre Strong also had 6 opportunities. Yet when we look at Ford, he had 61% snap share and a 59% route participation. He has a solid role potentially locked down. Especially when we look and see with Nick Chubb in week 1, Ford was still involved. He, 10 plus touches as well with Chubb. So obviously the Browns, they kind of want to have that RB1. And I am going to see if someone else, in my leagues, or, if you want to see someone else in your league is looking to sell because he had that 2 touchdown game and it was a tough game, I will gladly try to buy Jerome Ford. Moving on, another running back, we are looking at Kyren Williams, one of the most traded, 4th most traded. Now, last week, week 3, he saw every single running back touch and every single snap. Yet, I'm still going to try to sell while I can. The Rams, they did recently trade Cam Akers away. So it makes sense that Kyren, he had to kind of step up in week 3 to handle that workload. Zach Evans, he was inactive. Hopefully he's active soon. But they recently promoted Royce Freeman for that week 3 game. Head coach Sean McVay, he was noted to be saying they need to be cognizant of 17 games, supplement some players' workloads. Now he could be talking about Puka Nacua. Who am I to know? I just am not a believer in Williams that he's necessarily good outside of his blocking abilities. He's just like that de facto RB1 at the moment. I'm going to try to sell high and try to get another equal stable asset similar to kind of that Mostert trade. As we go on here, another running back, Joshua Kelley. When we speak about a de facto RB1, enter Joshua Kelley. I will recommend selling him. However, it's going to be hard after that week 3 struggle against Minnesota, 11 carries for 12 yards, 1 reception for 5 yards. If you are able to find a buyer, then sell while you can. It appears the matchup, it just does not necessarily matter for Kelley. Minnesota was supposed to be a great matchup. The Chargers, they will face the Raiders, and they're heading into their bye week. There's no exact return dates yet for Austin Eckler, maybe after that bye week. I'm just going to assume, obviously, when he is back and healthy, he's going to assume that historical usage he has had before. Looking at Kelley, he's not an RB1, yet he could kind of be that complementary piece. I'm thinking similar to Alexander Madison, where like they kind of shine a few games, but they just are unable to completely take on a true workload. Sell Joshua Kelley. Now we're continuing here. What do you know? Another running back, Najee Harris. There has been tons of commentary going around on Twitter saying Harris, he is not good. And, if you needed a negative 1 yard rush, Harris is your guy. And when we look at week 3, Harris, he did have 19 touches for 65 yards. Backup Jaylen Warren, he had 11 touches for 52 yards. When we look at all of this, I'm going to recommend buying Harris. It just seems he has a low value, and that recent commentary surrounding him may have a league mate on edge. Pittsburgh, they have faced tough run defenses to start their season, and their offensive line is allowing that defensive rush to enter that backfield almost immediately. The schedule, it should lighten up, at least in terms of that rush defense moving forward, especially these next kind of given weeks. Now, there is no denying Harris, he has been disappointing so far through 3 games, especially with Warren hanging around in those shadows. This is why I do want to buy, because another league mate who drafted Harris early and may be disappointed. So that's kind of create this low cost. However, if you are getting that expectation of a 2022 cost return, then I'm out on that. Moving on, here we have the 7th most traded player recently and another running back. And we are looking at DeAndre Swift here. He is an obvious buy, and the entire league knows that. Over the last 2 games, he has 48 touches and 319 yards. He's completely taken control of that Philadelphia backfield, and he absolutely looks determined to keep that RB1 role for that offense. Now, Philadelphia, they will continue to keep Gainwell involved. And in fact, in week 3, Gainwell, he did have 46% of snaps. But I kind of noticed that, we should note that Gainwell, he saw a handful amount of his opportunities there in that garbage time. Moving back to Swift, he has 5.6 yards before contact, which is first in the NFL. Pair Swift's talent and that Philadelphia offensive line, and now you have a dynamic running back and combination here to score you fantasy points. Go ahead and buy Swift, especially high if you have to. Moving on, and we have a great change of pace here. The 8th most traded player recently is Puka Nacua. Now, Cooper Kupp, he is eligible to return in week 5. There is theories out there, that Nacua, he fits this Kupp role best, and he's going to take a hit when Kupp returns. However, I don't necessarily care for that narrative. He has shown that he deserves the ball. Now, he has a 33% targets per route run. He is 2nd in yards per route run among rookies. And now looking at just total stats, he's 5th in the NFL in total targets, and he's 4th in the NFL in receiving yards. The ball, it finds the talent. Targets are earned. And McVay, I would assume he's going to be gladly scheming up plays for Kupp and Nacua. Now, looking at him again, he has shown just through 3 weeks, he has the ability to play in this league at a very high level. In week 3, he came back down to earth. He only had 7 targets. He only had 5 receptions, and he only had 72 yards. Yet that is a floor game. Maybe you have a little buy opportunity here with that cup return hype coming. Now, as we move on, we're back to these running backs. Looking at Javonte Williams here. Now, despite this first year ACL return, Williams, he has handled 14.7 touches per game through these 3 weeks. Samaje Perine, he's seen a decreased workload, and rookie Jaleel McLaughlin, he's only had 7 total touches. Williams, he has yet to find that end zone, which creates this buy opportunity here. The backfield, it's currently 50-50 split, which obviously it should not be surprising given Williams recovering from that ACL. It's first year back. The Broncos, they could be easing him into this year. I just feel like this should have been expected. He has 36 total carries, Williams, and the next highest is Samaje Perine with 12. However, Williams, he only has 4 more snaps than Perine. I'm not going to complain, as it's evident the Broncos prefer Williams touching the ball. I am optimistic and will assume the Broncos will look to get Williams more involved as the season progresses. Moving on to the 10th most recently traded player, we are looking at Josh Jacobs. Another running back without a touchdown, yet Jacobs, he has averaged 18.3 touches per game through these first 3 weeks. The usage has been great, and this is why I want to buy and chase that usage. The points, they will come. Maybe we have not seen much because Jacobs switched to number 8. Jokes aside, the immediate future, it does have some favorable matchups here. He only has 3.39 yards per opportunity, but again, he is seeing that volume. And as mentioned, chase those points because they will come. Now, looking at the 11th and 12th most recent traded players, that is A.J. Brown and Jamar Chase. It's always tough to buy a player coming off a big game, but it's also harder to buy a player that was drafted super early. Looking at Brown, he had 9 receptions and 131 yards in week 3. Looking at Jamar Chase, he had 12 receptions and 141 yards. These are, according to CBS, recently traded. So, these are easy buy recommendations if I had to pick buy or sell. But, good luck trading for these players unless you just want to give up a big multiplayer package. Now, without providing context, it's easy to say buy or sell these players. The individual analysis surrounding those players, it's known to the public. Let's continue that Garrett Wilson example. It's widely known Wilson has struggled with Zack Wilson at quarterback. It's not going to be easy to find a buyer, but it might be easy to find a seller. There is potential to include that Garrett Wilson in a package for A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase. If you were lucky enough to get Jerome Ford or Kyren Williams off waivers, maybe adding those two or one of those two with Wilson, maybe you can acquire someone like A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase. Now let's look at additionally recently traded players, and I will give you 12, but let's hit you with a couple quick hitters right here. Michael Pittman, the 14th most traded player, 3 straight games over 10 targets. However, I may need to say he is a sell high right here. He's been the beneficiary of Gardner Minshew. In week 1 with Anthony Richardson in the first half, he had 1 receptions on 3 targets. I would assume Richardson, he's going to be the starting quarterback when healthy, and we may see that dip in Pittman usage. I do understand that one half of play with Richardson, it's a small sample size, so take a grain for salt. Moving on for a couple quick more here. Zack Moss, 23rd most traded player. He's looked great with the Colts. In these 2 games, he has 38 carries and 6 receptions for 252 yards. It may seem like he's making it hard on Jonathan Taylor, especially with his contract, trade, whatever's going on. However, head coach Shane Steichen, he did say Taylor will be off the pup in a week. So, I guess sell while you can. Unfortunately, Steichen made that comment on Monday. And, as we are Friday. Now, another running back, Brian Robinson, B. Robinson. Shout out to the Commanders. He's 29th most traded. Now, looking at him, he is 7th in the NFL in rushing yards. And I will try to acquire him. He's coming off a kind of quiet week 3. He only had 10 total touches. Now, when we look at the first 2 weeks, he had 20 touches each game. There may be a small little bye week here given, that week 3 stat line. I'm going to assume Eric Bieniemy, he's going to look into that and correct that week 3 usage moving forward, where Robinson only had 37% snaps. Now, the last one I'll talk about here is James Cook, the 33rd most recent traded player. Shout out to our own Jeff Bell. Cook, he is 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards. He also has 84 routes run, which is good for 5th in the NFL among running backs. He has 2 straight games over 100 scrimmage yards, so it may be a little difficult to acquire Cook. Now, if you can, he would be worthwhile, as Buffalo does seem to be featuring him in the offense. Thank you for watching today's video where we broke down the 12 most recently traded players and a couple additional ones. If you did enjoy the content, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more fantasy content.